Welcome everybody that's viewing tonight. This is Crypto Bloom. If you're tuning in right now, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. It's either Friday or Saturday, so things are looking pretty good. I've got a real treat for you tonight. I'm sitting here with Amir and Chris Lowe, the CEO and lead blockchain scientist from really one of the coolest blockchain projects that's out there right now. So the project is called Soar, and I'm going to let them get into the details for you, but essentially, it's a blockchain-based platform that drone users can use to monetize their captured content and then ultimately create passive streams of income through that. So, yes, that is correct. I did say drones, you know, the great, cool little gadgets that you see in front of you right there that we all love and probably have friends that have much better versions than we do. So it is 10 p.m. Central Standard Time. It is 11 a.m. in Perth, Australia, where my new two friends are. So to summarize tonight, we've got drones, we've got Australian accents, and we've got crypto. So at the end of the day, what else could you ask for? So, and remember, everybody tuning in, stick around to the end of the interview because our friends at Soar have a surprise for you. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Amir Farhand and Chris Lowe. Good morning, guys, or I guess I should say good day.
Good day indeed. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. Other than the AC being shut off here, it's fantastic. So, well, before we jump into the project, if you guys don't mind, tell me a little bit about your backgrounds. I mean, I know everybody would love to learn more about you as individuals.
Sure. Look, no problems at all. First of all, thank you for everyone's time. And I know it's very late or getting very late in different parts of the world or getting very early, I guess, Chris. But yeah, look, well, first of all, I'm the CEO and founder of Soar. It's been an incredible journey so far. And, you know, my background, if you just want to take it back, you know, several years is satellite imagery, remote sensing, earth science. I came back from an area, I guess, a time where satellite imagery was really going to the masses. It was going from military technology and industry to civilian uses. And that was probably about, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago. I've worked in various projects, you know, in different countries, looking at different applications of this geospatial technology. And I sort of, you know, as in any career, we sort of stumble into something completely new. And I think when you hear Chris's story, you'll see how one thing can lead to another. But what for us, which was really exciting, and we'll get to it in a second as well, is just how Soar sort of took fragments of different people's backgrounds, you know, and skill sets, and it sort of was, you know, a really, really good application, a pure application of blockchain technology was born out of it. So I guess I'm not an engineer. I'm more of an innovator / scientist. You can call me at the very, very best an imaging scientist or a mapping scientist, but Chris is this scientist, and I'll turn it over to Chris to give a bit of an introduction. Camera over.
Yeah, cool. Great. Yeah, so I was one of those very tenacious kids that just loved computers right from the get-go. So I started programming when I was, you know, very, very young, and just have always loved it and always really enjoyed it. I mean, I just love building things, you know, always have. I joined with Amir about 5 years ago, working on basically turning a lot of what he does out in the field, which is remote sensing and you know, imagery layers, satellite imagery layers, and building mobile geospatial apps. So these are applications that people can take out into very remote areas where there's no internet connectivity, and they can see their data layered on top of each other for various things. So yeah, as a sort of a happy accident, I guess, of dealing with so much satellite raster data, I ended up getting into looking at drone applications as well. So, you know, how incredible it is to see just basically from a bird's eye view and to be able to take that data and to stand inside of your data as if it was, you know, captured from a bird. So really, really, really interesting technology for me as an engineer and as somebody who just likes to build things and likes to experiment and get to play with these toys now. So.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, it's Chris. It's actually funny though, because Chris's traditional background is actually used to be a cook.
Oh yes,
no, so, you missed that bit. That's the best bit.
I took a break from programming for a couple of years and went down to the Food and Wine region of Western Australia, Margaret River, and it was supposed to be a couple of weeks, just a few weeks, just surfing and going to the vineyards, but ended up picking up a chef's apprenticeship and staying there for 4 years.
Oh wow! So I guess that means they had good wine and good waves, right?
Oh yeah, fantastic surf. Yeah.
He does love his surf. There's definitely no doubt about that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you guys for sharing. I think maybe the best way to start this out is in your own words. I'd love to hear, really what is Soar? What's it really all about?
Look, Soar, I just wanted to maybe spend 1 minute or 2 minutes going back to how Soar started as a product. So what we were doing was, because we were from Western Australia, everything is based on mining, oil and gas and energy and so forth. So we were, and I guess similar to different parts of, places like Canada and Texas and stuff like that. So we were constantly out in the field. We wanted to look at mapping context, and we wanted to take that data and put it on mobile devices such as tablets and handheld phones and so forth. And what we found was that there was a significant technology gap between what traditional users would use, such as Google Maps and Google Earth and so forth, loading their own content and their own images on there, and then take it out completely in a disconnected environment. Now that was in 2012. And from those, projects, we found out that there's not only a significant gap, which we knew before, but we thought, if we get this right, if we rebuild this from scratch, we could be on something really, really great over here. And then in 2015, we were lucky enough to be approached by the US military, and we started experimenting with how we can take these mapping engines completely offline. And we found that in mid last year, when the technology was fully mature, we realized, hey, this has got incredible civilian applications for everyday users. And so to answer that question, what is Soar? It's effectively a decentralized supermap of the world that sits on blockchain. And although we make it, at the initial stages, we say it's drone technology, we chose drones because they're the most, the broadest use of applications in the civilian market. But Soar can do far more than just drones. It can do daily satellite imagery. It could do aerial imagery and so forth. So it's not constrained to one form of data. And I guess the best way to also look at Soar is instantly people compare it to Google Maps. We're not a competitor to Google Maps or Google Earth and stuff like that. In fact, we see those guys as our partners. In fact, I think one of our base layers is Google Maps at the moment as well. We look at it as an extension of what Google Maps is doing and the incredible great work that Google Maps has done. So, things that you can't do in Google Maps that you can do in Soar. So, for example, you can't go back in time in somewhere in the world with Google Maps. You can't zoom in very, very high resolution in certain areas. You can't look at different types of imagery. I mean, in Google Maps, it's what the eye can see. We want to go beyond that. We want to go, what does the eye see? What does the area look like in thermal imagery, in multispectral imagery? We want to really enable people with this super map. It is a super map to us. Like we sometimes call it Google Maps on steroids. It's a bit of a word, sort of phrase that we sort of fling around the place.
Sure.
But we want to be able to let people in the world, anyone, become an imaging / mapping expert with our technology and with Soar.
So that's pretty interesting. I mean, I think that, myself included, and probably a lot of people that are out there, have never realized that drones have things like thermal imaging cameras. So that was a surprise to me as I read through your white paper. What are some of the applications for something like this, not just a traditional picture or video?
Yeah, look, it's quite fascinating because if you look at the technology layer of how this technology, was originally hatched, I guess, for military applications and, government use and all that, even in the 1970s and 1980s, and how it's evolved to be used every day. I mean, you got these drones in front of us, and these are DJI drones. And what you see here, what the capabilities of these drones can do now versus what drones could do 5 years ago, it's just incredible. I mean, this little guy here, I'll just pick him up. This is a DJI Spark, right? I mean, I love this thing. It's probably my favorite drone, even though you got these big drones over here, right? But this little thing over here, right, is probably around, I don't know, $1,000 Australian, right? But the funny thing is that it could take all sorts of photos. You can filter the camera to, take, I don't know, different types of data out of it. But the most amazing thing about it is this is individuals that got pretty much no mapping background can get access to this kind of imagery from this little device. And this democratizes the technology. And I guess if you look at the data sets that are available from these drones, it's really just starting to evolve. There's drones out there that have got incredible cameras that can, I think 4K resolution. You could put thermal resolution, cameras underneath them, multispectral. And I think what we're seeing is just the start of something which I think is going to change in the next probably 10 years. Some people call it the drone era has just started. And we really want to get on top of that, because what's happened is that you've got consumer drones and you've got commercial drones. And in the last 5 years, these have completely merged almost. And these devices here are perfect examples of them. 5 years ago, you would have to spend maybe $10,000 to get access to this kind of device. But because they've got closer and closer together in terms of technology, incredible opportunities have been born, and companies such as Soar is one of the examples.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So you talk about how this is the drone era, as you called it. I mean, how many drones are really out there in the world? Do we have an idea?
Yeah, look, different people have done market research and identified how big the market is, but they're expected by 2020 to be around about, I think the market will probably be worth about $80 billion. And by 2020, we think it's probably going to be around about 22 to 23 million drones in the world. But what's really exciting is with those drones is that more than half of those drones actually actively being used to create content. And that's where Soar comes in, because we want to take that content and do some incredible things with it. One really interesting statistic, which while we were doing, because we've done a lot of background research into the industry, obviously where we come from in our fields of study and research, and also, the time we've spent in the commercial markets, we've identified that 80% of the drone content that people, acquire actually only ever gets used once. And then the rest of it just gets thrown away, or it sits on a hard drive gaining dust. And that's where Soar comes in. We want to be able to take that data and do some incredible things with it.
Well, that's actually a great question. I mean, you mentioned earlier about this is, essentially putting this onto the blockchain. But I guess I'm kind of curious, where's the actual data storage going to take place?
Over to you, Chris.
Yeah, sure. I can take that question. So as you know, blockchain's fantastic for fairly small amounts of data, data that you need to protect, and you need to make sure it's got, good integrity. Large data like what we're talking about, petabytes, terabytes worth of data, doesn't really live on the blockchain. So we're using cloud-based providers. In fact, we're using Alibaba Cloud so that we get a better global reach, particularly for, China and countries like this. And essentially what we've got is a handshake with the blockchain. So when a transaction is made, it creates in the smart contract, it creates a secret challenge, which is then used to verify against the file that's sitting on the hard drive. So although you don't get the immutability of the blockchain with this off-chain cloud storage, you do get that guarantee that the file hasn't been modified in any way from when it was written to the blockchain.
Okay. I think that's a really good point that Chris makes as well. Also, is there's a clear separation and delineation between what we do store on the blockchain and what isn't. I mean, there was in our Telegram community, people ask us sometimes, "Oh, look, you guys are crazy. You're throwing incredible high resolution, satellite imagery and drone content onto the blockchain." Well, it's actually not going on the blockchain. It's off-chain storage.
Yeah, so it's essentially like it's the metadata that we store about that imagery that was collected. What kind of drone was it, when it was taken, who took it, and obviously the file hash, the fingerprint of that file of that data set.
So that's the smart contract.
So that's sitting on the blockchain and inside of the blockchain, and then the actual file, and what it does is it references the off-chain file on cloud storage.
Okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So let me ask you this. I mean, we talk about these how many drones are out there right now, and I know a lot of these are not commercial drones. These are more kind of, let's call them hobbyists. But you guys talk about converting these hobbyists in the white paper over to commercial drone users. If you don't mind, kind of tell me a little bit of background on what are your plans for doing that, and why is that important?
Look, this is a really good question, and I guess you get asked this all the time. I was doing an interview yesterday, I think, and this question came up. Look, the problem is right now is I think there's in fact too much data out there, and we want to be able to use the best quality data. So one of the things that we see as a potential challenge for us is making sure that everybody understands and is educated, I think, for three things. Number one, the power of blockchain. Okay, that's really, really important. Second of all, and there are negativities towards blockchain usage as well. So people need to be made aware of that. The second thing is people need to be made aware of what exactly can these devices do? What can satellite imagery do that drones can't? But what can't satellite imagery do that drones can? This is a really important factor. And many people that actually go to their electronics store and they do purchase, these drones, they don't really, probably 80% of them, 90% of them don't even understand what is really capable. The reason I want to take as an example to let's look at Instagram, right? There's a lot of people that upload drone content on Instagram, incredible imagery. I've got my personal favorites on there, and we are constantly retweeting and what do they call it? Re-Instagramming people's content and saying how incredible this stuff is. But I think, John, one of the interesting things is that I look at those images, they're fantastic. But the drone operator, in those cases, they only get likes, okay? That's all they get. They get a bit of a branding out of it, and that's it. What we're saying to people is, look, that exact same image, if you put that onto Soar, not only can you distribute it, if you choose to sell it or distribute it for free, it's completely up to you. But you're actually, that content that is captured inside that image can be implemented onto this super map for basically the benefit of humanity. So, and that's where we try to come up with this word, the word super map, because there's an incredible amount of data that's being captured in these cameras, and different people can do different things with that data. I mean, you and I might capture an image of, say, a coastline or a beach in Hawaii, and for us, it might be maybe checking out some waves or some touristy, photo or something like that. But maybe in a couple of weeks' time or a month's time or a year's time, the local council or the local government will come along and they want to do a coastal erosion assessment, and they need to use that data. In other cases, they probably wouldn't have access to it. So it's all about making sure and educating the drone operators, saying, hey, look, this is the power of the content that you've got. Put it onto a platform that multiple people can use it at multiple times.
Yeah, that makes sense. So now, how do you actually plan on, I mean, obviously the usage of it is a part of education, but will there be any kind of outreach to the users to really explain this other than your white papers? Will you guys be doing videos, for example?
Yeah, look, what we're trying to do is really want to use social media as a leverage. As I said, Instagram for us is a big pull because it is a very visceral and a very image-based medium. We're planning on various roadshows around the world. And the third one is probably the most important one, actually, is partnerships. So we've been lucky enough to partner up with some incredible organizations. And over the next probably 2 to 3 months, you're going to see Soar's branding be at pretty much every drone conference in the world. So Chris is going to be pretty busy, and the rest of the guys are going to be pretty busy as well. Just encouraging people to onboard. The other one is making partnerships with hardware providers as well. So, we've got some fantastic DJI gear in front of us here, but there are other manufacturers in the world that, we need to partner up with, because I think out-of-box solutions, when people realize, similar to what it is on a mobile phone, when you capture a photo, it comes up with an option. Do you want to upload this to Twitter or Instagram? We really want to be at that coalface whereby the moment content is captured, the choice is given to the user to be able to upload it into the Soar platform.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So I've got a question that came in from the audience here. They're asking, so you mentioned Google Maps earlier. Now, so they're saying that they see that Google Maps is a competitor, but obviously you say that you think that there's a way to work with Google Maps. So could you go into a little bit more detail about what you mean by that and how you're going to be able to work alongside each other?
Google Maps is just a little bit of a claim to fame, though, as well. Google Maps is actually originally an Australian product as well. It was born out of Sydney. So I just want to throw that in there because I'm very patriotically Australian. But the thing is that Google Maps changed the way, and Google Earth, they changed the way we view maps in general, like civilians, consumers. Probably 99% of people in the world, the very first thing that they did when they opened up Google Earth was to zoom into their own house. It was a very personal experience for them. And then they went to various landmarks around the world. Now, let's look at that when it comes to Soar, okay? Soar it's constantly evolving. It's a map that is constantly evolving. It is never, if in our world, we want to be able to, and I guess this is a great segue into the tokenomics of the product, is we think that in the world, not all places in the world should be held in the same, I guess, in the same framework of importance when it comes to imaging and mapping. So for instance, somewhere in the middle of the desert in Australia, which hardly anyone ever goes to, and someone probably hasn't gone to maybe in years, right? Okay. Why would that area be imaged constantly versus a thriving urban area or an agricultural area or even a tourist area? So Google Maps, we see the constraints as Google Maps as not being able to go back in time and people not being able to place, we like to call them sky bounties, but areas of importance in Google Maps where they want constant supply of imagery. To get that constant supply of imagery, they have to go to traditional powerhouses around the world, which are fantastic imaging technology companies, pay very, very high prices, and the content is not usable for the average day consumer. The other thing, if you look at it, and I guess maybe Chris can probably enlighten it, is the zoom levels that are currently available at Google Maps. At the end of the day, Google's a search company. We're not a search company. We want to be an imaging/mapping company. So, Chris, do you want to maybe just talk about maybe the quad tree and the zoom levels of Google Maps versus what we're trying to do with Soar?
Sure. Just very briefly, so I don't go into too much technical detail as I like to do. Essentially, when you consider a map, there's a system called the quad tree in there, which defines how you actually zoom into a map. So you start off at a very high level, and every time you split that into 4 and 4 and 4, and then you keep going down and down and down. And eventually, with something like Google Maps, you get down to about zoom level 19, maybe zoom level 20 in high resolution areas. And this will give you enough to see, a car maybe, or you can make out where a sidewalk is, something like that. Now, Google, that's as far down as Google will go, because that's as far down as the imagery from the satellite will actually resolve to. But whereas drones, drones by comparison, can take much higher resolution imagery. So our mapping engine goes down a lot further than that does, and allows you to zoom right down to sort of leaf on the sidewalk kind of level of detail.
That's great, and we've actually got a video that y'all sent us, so we're gonna play this so all of the viewers can check it out, because it's pretty cool how much resolution you really can get on this.
This is really cool for us because it just shows you the differences between what Google Maps, the power of Google Maps versus the power of Soar, and both of them incredible products. There's no doubt about it. But they've both got different uses, and that's the clear delineation that we're trying to get out of it at the moment.
Wow. Yeah, that's definitely pretty impressive.
And one of the best examples of it as well, John, is that in that quad tree video that you saw, there's multiple data layers. I mean, we used examples. I mean, Chris, maybe you can talk about it a little bit extra, but there was imagery that could, in Soar, there's imagery that you can use for weather. Okay, so I'm talking regional synoptic scale satellite imagery. And then we can go a little bit further in, and it could be, say, region-based or city-based satellite imagery. And then it goes even a little bit further in where there's aerial imagery, which could be updated. I mean, satellite imagery is updated almost every single day, but aerial imagery maybe once or twice a year. And then you power through that, and then you go through the drones, which could be updated once a day even, if you really want. I mean, that's the power of the quad tree, right?
Yeah, so I think the original question was are you not a competitor with Google Maps? But the way I kind of look at it is we're a complement to it. So a lot of the imagery you saw there was the Google Maps, and then our imagery sits over the top of that, or more accurately, probably underneath it, that allows you to zoom in deeper and deeper. So so we consider ourselves, and Google Maps is just one sort of provider for these kind of imageries, in our space. and you saw in that video, there's a lot of different kinds of satellites that have got different kinds of sensors and different kinds of resolutions. And all of these things work together alongside the drone imagery.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So you mentioned sky bounties earlier. This was a question that I'd wanted to ask from the, I think the community would be interested in hearing about. Explain what sky bounties are, and then kind of what sky moderators are, and how do they work together?
Well, what I'll do is I'll explain the best way that I can the first half of that question, and answer that. And I think Chris has got a really good answer for the second half of that.
Great.
As I said before, we see the world in different variances. We think that certain areas should be prioritized over, areas which don't need a priority for whatever reason. So the sky bounty is effectively a location versus time-driven demand, based on the theory that not all locations in the world have the same value at the same amount of time, at the same period of time. And what we like to do is effectively using the quad tree and all these other technologies is essentially let the users put sky bounties in different areas of the world for that to be imaged, okay, at different times. And that effectively drives the utility token model. Chris, do you want to maybe go take that to the next level with regards to that?
Sure. So essentially part of the value calculations in the marketplace is different parts of the world are going to have different priorities. They're going to be worth more than other places in the world. And it's a supply and demand metric. So we use the amount of data that's available versus the amount of data that people are wanting from that area to sort of, derive a value for that area. And on top of that system, the bounty system is essentially a way for to intervene in that marketplace to say, hey, I'm super interested in this area. Perhaps I've got a farm out there. Perhaps I'm trying to sell a property out there or something, and I really need some information from this area. And the drone operators are able to look at this information in a bit of like a heat map and decide where I happen to be in this area. I can check out the Soar app and if I just take my drone up and fly in this area, capture a bit of imagery, start to make a bit of money almost instantaneously from the bounty system.
I think the other cool thing about that is that let's look at that example of the urban area or an agricultural area versus the middle of the Australian outback, right? There is no value to image the outback every single day, okay? Like it could be in a city or an agricultural area where there is constant movement of humanity, and the environment is changing as well very quickly. But let's pretend that a mining company, finds gold in the middle of the outback, which happens a lot over here, right? And that's why we're here. But the crazy thing about that is that particular value of that area all of a sudden goes up. So, drone operators, satellite imaging companies, aerial imaging companies can go out there and actually acquire that data and images, and all of a sudden the value of that particular grid goes up. So I think in the interview yesterday, the interviewer asked me, goes, is it kind of like Uber, like requesting 8 drivers nearby? It's kind of like that. I mean, if you're setting the sky bounty, you're basically getting connected to all these incredible data providers, and it's their job to give you the best quality data at the best price. Now, you could set the price, right, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah. And that price can go up and down, obviously, depending on what else is going on, as Chris said, with the heat map. An example of this is probably, we invite people to go on our testnet and actually have a bit of a play with the heat map there and see where current content has actually been captured quite a lot. In fact, it's quite interesting to see what patterns are already emerging in the amount of content.
Mm-hmm. So that's very interesting. So I've got a personal question. What happens if you've got 2 or more people that have content in the same area? How do you decide who gets paid, or is that? I guess I can just leave that question to y'all.
Yeah, sure, I can take that.
Yeah.
So in the case of just the flat marketplace, it's the value it's the data which people are more interested in. The ones that people are more willing to buy. In the case of the sky bounty system, it comes down to a first in best dressed kind of system. So again, I didn't want to get into too much technical detail here, but a particular grid in the world, a particular portion of the quad tree in the world is assigned a value. And the first person who comes in and collects data from that area receives half of that value. The next person who comes in receives half of what's remaining and half of what's remaining, and so on. So it's a bit of a geometric fall off until that bounty is completely consumed.
So there's some value for being first to the area every time.
Exactly.
Yeah, you should explain it, yeah.
So I don't know how many of you played Pokemon Go when it was around, but it was
Never.
terrific because got you up on your feet and you got you chasing out areas and trying to beat other people to the area. I really want to see drones, gamified like that. Collection of content gamified like that. So there's a lot of I'm falling back on a lot of video game. I used to be a video game programmer as well, so I'm falling back on a lot of those sort of impulses to sort of say, this can actually be really a lot of fun and make a bit of money along the way while I'm doing it. So yeah, so a bit of a race to the finish line to try to get out into these areas. And one of our marketing team came up with the term just be the next Columbus, which I thought was really interesting. So as we're sort of kicking off as well, there are going to be areas of the world that don't have data collected for them, and you being the first one out there, you get the
I mean, that is really cool, right? I'll give you an example, John, where that came about recently. Is I was speaking to one of our community members, and this community member is an awesome community member. Won't name him, but he likes to trek in South America. And he's got a drone, which is very, very similar to this little guy over here, right? And it's quite small. It goes into his backpack. Now, if he's backpacking across Peru somewhere and on the phone, he's just doing his thing, and all of a sudden a notification comes up going, hey, John has placed a sky bounty on this waterfall or this river or this mountain nearby. Do you want to image it? You'll be the first person ever to take a drone image of that area and upload it to Soar. This guy just goes, flies it and collects the data, and up it goes into so he gets paid. He gets the recognition for being Columbus, and it's really great. And that's what we're trying to do here with the community. Is the community is an essential part of this. For this to grow, we want the community to be vested into that exploration and that discovery phase of us.
So I've got an add-on question to that. So let's say you brought up the idea earlier of natural disasters, and sometimes things happen, and you to be able to change in time. So let's say somebody is the first to an area. Let's use Hawaii for example. When they had all the volcanoes going off, I guarantee you someone would have Hawaii just because it's so beautiful. But then now fast forward to the volcanoes going off, somebody coming into that same spot has a very different video. How do you differentiate in that? I mean, do you have a plan for that?
Yeah, part of the way that you view the data in the Soar on the Soar platform will be with like the time slider. You can actually swing back through time and see how things have changed. So the volcanoes are a very interesting example of that, because obviously beauty shots of the mountains taken a couple of years ago are going to be very different than what they are right now. Yeah. And that really falls into what really speaks a good narrative about what we're trying to do here, which is the world's not static. It's always changing. It's always evolving. It's moving, particularly in natural disaster zones or with environmental zones. So it's super important to be able to see how that area has changed over time. So essentially all that will be, if you are interested in that area, that particular part of the world, you just drag the little slider back and you can see what it was like at those particular parts of time.
So I guess the way to think of it is, it'll be up to the person actually that wants to use the data to identify, do they want the old stuff or they want the new stuff? I mean, some cases they don't want the new stuff. I mean, if you are going back and looking for, illegal building sites, that was an example that happened in the recent Greece wildfires there, then you would want the older imagery. You don't want the new stuff. So we think that it's and that's why the utility token model makes sense with this, is that because you can see the changes. It's completely dynamic. It's
one of the interesting pieces of imagery that came across my desk the other week was from some illegal mining operations in the Amazon. So that was really interesting as well, because obviously you look in the Google Maps, which is our baseline, like I said, that's our complement layer, and you can see, the nice lush forest, and it's fairly pixelated. And then you look, someone's caught them with a drone, essentially coming into an area they're not allowed to and mining. I think they're mining for gold, so there was a lot of arsenic poisoning and so on. And you can see that change over time. You can see that this is what it was like 2 years ago. These guys have come in that time. So I mean, huge implications for, particularly environmental, like coastal erosion and rising sea levels and stuff like that, to be able to go back in time and see how an area has changed.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. So. Well, you were getting into some technical stuff here, so I think it's kind of a good kind of segue, or good time to segue into that. So, perhaps maybe questions for you, Chris. You'd mentioned, we were talking about the storage. Tell me what all is going to sit on the blockchain, and then, what is not. If there's anything else to elaborate, if we've already talked about it, we can move on to the next. But is there anything else there?
Yeah, sure. I can go into that a little bit more. Essentially, what we store is some really critical information: the file hash, the person who collected the data, the timestamp that the data was collected, the timestamp that it was uploaded. We also hold just a JSON payload, so just a payload of data, string data, to add a bit of extra contextual information to it. Some social media kind of things. Tags, descriptions, just to help it out, help search it out. We saw what's called a geohash, and I don't want to get too much technical detail about that, but essentially it's a hash of the location that was collected from, and a link to where that file is stored off chain. In the case of video, we store like a path track of it all. So, but essentially, I don't really need to get into too much more detail. But essentially, what we store on the blockchain is the critical identifying information, and what we store off chain is the big bulky imagery itself.
Yeah, makes sense.
I mean, just sorry, go on, John.
Oh no, I just said that makes sense. Please go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if people can go onto our testnet, and I mean, we're very proud of our testnet because it's the development cycle is well and truly ahead of schedule, and we're not that far away from our mainnet as well, which is great for a blockchain company. But I think one of the things that's really interesting with it is that if you actually go, and we invite community members and users to go and check it out, is if you look at the drone content there and you look at the metadata, Chris and the engineering team have put all the blockchain details in there in a table. And I mean, I'm just reading off on my laptop right now. You've got the block number, the transaction index, the geohash, which Chris talked about before, the file hash, and of course the owner. And what's really, really important for us is to make sure that this information resonates with the community on understanding, in terms of authenticity and accountability, where was it taken, where was it taken, when was it taken, and how it was taken is really important, and by whom. So this is all vends inside the blockchain model that we've got.
Okay, and y'all have chosen the Ethereum as your base chain. Can you tell me, why Ethereum? Have you thought about other chains as well, or other protocols
absolutely.
as well?
Now you're asking him big questions here. This is like
absolutely. It's really funny you should ask, because I've literally been in meetings all week with various other blockchains. We went with Ethereum because we wanted to get something out to market as quickly as we can in terms of the demo testnet platform. We needed to get something out there to basically show the community that we know what we're doing and that we're capable of building these things. So Ethereum was the obvious choice because it's the most mature. It's it's got all the developer tools. It's stable, but it obviously it does have some problems as well. So that's why we're looking at other blockchain providers. The way we've known about it's been our plan from day one to at some point build our own protocol. We're talking years down the track here. But the way we've deliberately architectured our platform was in a bit of a pyramid shape, where just the actual smart contracts themselves just form the very tip of the pyramid, so that we can take that and write it in a different blockchain and deploy it on a different platform. Relatively straightforward. There's the problem once we go live on Ethereum, we still need to transfer all that data from the Ethereum blockchain into the one that we want to target later on. But the point is, it's just it's an annoying problem, but it's not a big technical challenge. The hard work of actually decoupling everything and making sure that we can migrate to blockchains has been done.
I guess as a CEO as well, the way I look at it is I try to collaborate and communicate with other blockchains and other blockchain companies and look at exactly what they're doing and where, because everyone's got problems and successes at the moment. So we're just trying to identify as a community, the broader community, where this whole thing is going, because there's a lot of protocols out there that are suggesting to be able to, and as in Australia we say the bee's knees, but unfortunately, that they haven't borne any fruit at the moment. So we know that Ethereum, for whatever it can't do, it's doing something, and we've been able to get our testnet onto Ethereum at the moment, which is great. And we just really hope that in the very, very near future, there's going to be an elevation. And I look at the world as the power of collaborating with other blockchains is very, very important to us. There's some incredible blockchain projects out there as well right now, which, in the next couple of months could be just game changers, it's a terrific time to build these products on top of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and it's been pretty interesting for, for myself. I really see Australia as a place where there's some pretty exciting projects coming out of. So you guys are kind of in a new little hotspot for blockchain, it seems like.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, definitely.
So, one more question kind of added on to that last one. And I promise our viewers are pretty technical, but, it's about we got a question about the smart contract itself. What kind of payloads are going to be actually sitting onto the smart contract?
Okay, in terms of the JSON payload, so I mentioned there was a couple of actual discrete data points in there that we collect about the information. The JSON payload is deliberately quite opaque in that it's just here's a big hunk of text, that a hunk of information that the client can then interpret and understand. So some of the things in the payload are the title that we give it, general social media things to identify the image. So the title, a description, a whole bunch of hashtags. We store information about the exact model and serial number of the drone, the camera, focal length, the lighting conditions, all the metadata that the drone itself embeds inside of that image. So we store all of that information. Again, the geo hash, which is quite important for the operation of the system. The file hash being really important because the file hash identifies that the file that we're pointing to off chain hasn't been tampered with in any way.
I think, if I may just interrupt you for a second, I think the other thing that's really important from a smart contract is that the smart contract right now, the way we see the smart contract right now, so I think it's a lead on from the previous question, is there's potentially protocols will change, and there's going to be potentially changes to the way even the smart contracts are written. So one of the things personally that I'm very, very keen on is building, we want to build a mapping app store to subsequently sit on top of our super map. And as I mentioned initially in this AMA, was that we want people to be able to take images and do some incredible things with it. Kind of like a traditional app store when it opened up, there was only iTunes on the Apple App Store, right? But then now there's productivity tools, there's games, there's movies, there's all sorts of great stuff, right? And Pokemon Go and all that, right? That you love. But the thing is that in that smart contract, once we've got that content in there, in the future, there could be some incredibly massive, there could be some really smart kids out there that will be able to add fantastic quality of image recognition, AI, mapping technologies that can maybe pick out different, maybe cars versus trees or something, or animals versus trees or something like that. So we want the smart contract to be basically open-ended in terms of development. So we think we'll be able to onboard additional uses of our technology. We don't want to be constrained of what the definition of a smart contract is now, because we know that in the very, very near future, there's going to be some incredible insights made into that.
Just as a fairly simple example of that, if I was to load some imagery into it, some aerial imagery, and I was to say this is where it is on the map, and then somebody else comes along a little bit later on and goes, I could actually like auto rectify that a little bit better. I can line it up with where it lives against the underlying Google Maps, for example.
Yeah.
And basically add extra value onto that piece of data. So again, it comes into our ethos of democratization, of allowing that data to be used and improved by everyone.
We know that what these devices are capable of today, and what satellites and aerial imaging sensors are capable of today, is not going to be what they're going to be capable of tomorrow. Tomorrow, there is going to be some incredible changes to this technology as AI and machine learning gains pace and it goes to the next level. I think then, and even VR as well, as that really pushes on, I think there's some capabilities for that as well, Chris, as well. So, yeah.
Okay. So here's another question that I know is important to the community. It's going to be important as this project continues to mature. So it's two parts. I'm interested in the investors so far, and then your partners, and kind of what can we expect from the future, that you're able to disclose at this point.
Yeah, look, one of the things that because we live and breathe sort of geospatial mapping and imagery technology for the last X amount of years, we're lucky to be humbled enough to have a fantastic board and advisory team, but also we've got like a little black book of contacts in the industry, all the way from sort of the government level, military level, and then pushing over to civilian applications. So we're really proud with, first of all, with the investors that we've had so far, strategic and critical, really critical crypto investors, such as the big guys in China, such as JAR Crypto and Node Capital. Partnering up with Cryptotal is obviously a massive advantage for us and a great windfall, because it allows us to take the message to the broader community. And I think that's really important from an investor point of view. We're trying to attract investors that see the future of this product. They don't see it as just another blockchain ICO. This is not our intention to just be a flash in the pan. We want to really, stay the course. And that sort of takes us to the next level of the companies that we're collaborating with in terms of technology. I mean, we had a really, really good collaboration with currently at the moment with Alibaba. And the reason why we chose Alibaba is we saw Alibaba Cloud and the way that the technology interfaces they're working on, it really resonates with us. And also the spread and the reach of the content is really great with Alibaba. So for instance, there's access to Google, Microsoft Azure, and AWS in countries such as Russia, China, parts of South America, Iran. These kind of places is limited. So we made sure we wanted to, as a launchpad, we wanted to partner up with someone that give us a truly global presence. And then there's other companies and organizations as well, such as the World UAV Alliance. And these guys have got thousands of members and drone operators all over the world, which has got ridiculous amounts of data. We see that as being a very, very important part of it as well. And also then taking it to the next level, in the next couple of months, we've got some very exciting partnerships coming up, which probably I don't want to talk about now, but these are global brands which have got a lot of mapping data and a lot of just imagery data that they've taken over the years, either be it from a satellite or a drone or something, or a plane or something like that, and they want to basically fuse it into a platform for everyone to use. And I think the next level of that, I think, John, is probably, think of it like this, right? The consumerization of drones is just taking off in such a way that, as a CEO, I don't even know what's going to go next. This is going so quickly. But you look at, companies, telecommunication companies, global brands that buy a mobile phone. So you go into your mobile, to your telecommunications shop, and you buy your cellular device, your mobile phone, and you say, okay, I'm going to pay $100 a month or $50 a month for this device. You can now, at the same shop, purchase a drone for $30 a month. Push through, which is great. So for them, it's good. But for the community and the consumer side, it's great, because everyone's going to be there's going to be a new generation of kids that are going to be coming out there that know so much more about drones than what the current generation knows about. So in terms of collaboration, there's some really, really exciting opportunities just around the corner.
So you're saying that the younger generations know a little bit more about technology than the previous ones? Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't know. I'm going to have to debate that especially with my dad, that pretty much can fix anything at the moment, right? But you put him in the software side of things, he can barely log on to his email account. I mean, is there anything you want to add on to that, Chris, with the generations?
The young kids these days, I look at my nephews, they can just about, make the new iPhones and things sing and dance to their tune, and they can barely walk. It's quite incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that was kind of a little personal joke at my own expense. I didn't think I was unhip until I got into blockchain and realized I'm the old man that still does email and phone calls and writes things with pens. So
I mean, it's amazing, because the whole thing is so new, right? And it's just it's really just taken off in the last 2 or 3 years. But sometimes it's funny, because you look at these Snapchat youngsters and probably 16 to 17-year-olds type of thing, and they're loving Snapchat, but they know drones, okay, and they've got a different viewpoint in the world on what they can and what they can't do with their data. They see their data is out there. I mean, it was incredible. I mean, I'm not that old, right? And Chris is younger than me, and it's just even for me, sometimes I look at the data situation and I look at it and I go, what can you do with that data, right? What positive impact? And in fact, sometimes what negative impacts can it have? And you've got to be, as a company, we want to see ourselves as being at the forefront. So we want to be transparent with all types of, questions that comes to us and guidelines and frameworks that we need to set down to make sure that as a community, we are really growing with the technology at the same time, because these things are going to change. They're going to change no matter what, right? We need to work with the technology and the community at the same time.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, well, I got to tell you guys, this has seriously been great. I was very excited hearing that I was going to get a chance to talk to you today. Like I said, it's a very cool project. So, you know, we're changing gears a little bit. I think it is community time. I know we've got some questions that are coming in, and I know you guys wanted to announce that you've got a surprise for our viewers tonight.
Yeah, look, what we'd like to do is, in working with Kripatal and Token Need, we would love to do a 5,000 SkyMap token airdrop. And I think the information is shared on our community channel on Telegram on how to go about that. So we want to be able to push that out as soon as possible as a big thank you, and as a I guess as a starting point to really ignite the conversation and build the community.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, that's great that you guys did that. So, well, I'm going to take a couple questions from our community here. Let me see. I'm pulling it up. Let's see here. So, we've got someone asking. Actually, this is a pretty great lead-in question. So, they says, "I've got my own drone. Is it possible to upload that content onto Soar currently?"
Yes, it is. If you go to our platform at a testnet platform at demo.soar.earth. Across the net, but you know, I'd really invite everyone to have a good look at that. Have a play around with it. It's quite a bit of fun to look at all the imagery that's been collected already. And then up on the navigation bar, there's an upload button. If you press that, it will follow you through all the instructions you need to upload that. And yeah, you should be up and running in a couple of minutes. But yeah, I'd really love to see you know, the kind of data that you've got. There's some really amazing stuff out there.
Yeah, there is, and it's actually really easy to use as well. I mean, obviously you need to. I mean, you want to talk about maybe the MetaMask and just that capability as well.
Sure,
with it as well.
Sure. I'll keep it brief. The upload form and will take you through a couple of steps you need to go through, which is to install MetaMask, which allows you to communicate with the blockchain. And there is a step in there to get some because this is on the test net, so it's important to understand there's no real value until we transfer over to the main net. So one of the steps there is to receive some play Ethereum, some Ethereum to muck around with. I just wanted to point out as well that won't be a feature of the full system. We've got a system in the full system to make it essentially really, really easy for people to upload it when it goes into the mainnet. And we're calling that the sponsorship program, the Sky Sponsor program. And what that'll do is it's an extra level, and I'd love to get into a bit more detail if we had time, but it's just a mechanism to make the average person communicating with a blockchain application as easy as we possibly can. Literally just drag and drop a file. That's what we want to get it down to, because making that as easy as possible is really critical to getting that volume of
mass user adoption that we're looking for.
So with the testnet, it takes a few minutes to get started. With the mainnet launch, it'll be almost just drag and drop,
just seamless. We would invite that individual, please go on there and just have a play with it. I mean, we've already got people putting their content on there. Have a go at it, and if you do have any issues, would obviously send us a message on Telegram, and we'll love to help you.
The development of the platform as well is open source, so it sounds like we do have a lot of very technical people in the audience,
which is great.
Yeah,
it's really
absolutely.
good. Yeah.
So we've got our GitHub channel. You can check out the smart contracts or the source code for the platform there. And if you are technically minded, I'd really love to have people communicating with the issue tracker and GitHub and so on for ways to improve it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can see now, John, you're just zooming in there, and there's some imagery contact, and you can see the differences between what Google Maps is supplying versus what Soar is doing. And actually, you can see in that imagery over there on the right hand corner the blockchain details as well.
Yes,
and the file details.
There's some links there to the transaction on the Rink by testnet as well. Again, if you are very technically inclined, you can have a look at the information that's stored in the smart contract.
And you can, and we also ask people to also, to go there and actually download it. I mean, if you don't have, Chris, I think the community might want to know this as well, is if they don't have access to, Rinkeby or anything like that, they can still go there and actually look at the testnet. They don't need it, right?
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. the only time you need to go through that onboarding of installing MetaMask is if you want to upload content, because you need to be able to write into the blockchain. But for the average person that just wants to have a look and have a play around, there's no instructions. Just open the page up and it works.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
That's great. That's great. And yeah, I mean, it's drastically different detail. It really is. I mean, I would encourage the same thing as you guys. People should get on there and play around with this, because it's pretty neat. I mean, we've all Googled our house, and done it, and you get a little bit of you can kind of see it. But
yeah.
Okay, so well, I guess that's it. We're hitting up to our hour here, guys. So unless there's anything else that you want to finish, I think we're going to wrap this up. But I got to tell you, thank you so much, Amir. Thank you so much, Chris. This has been great. It's been informational. You guys, again, you got a really cool project. So it was great to be able to do this tonight.
Thank you for your time, John, and thank you for our community also for logging on and checking it out. And we actively encourage people to send us questions. There are no dumb questions, so please send them on to us and we'll answer them. And we're really looking forward to having the community as part of this. This is, I think, it's the backbone of what we want to do at the moment. So thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Hey, y'all have a wonderful weekend.
You too, mate. Take it easy.